Welcome to the How I Started Career Stories podcast, where we will interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, and company leaders to hear how they got to where they are on their career journey. We'll talk about the early days, the setbacks, the risks they took, and ultimately how they're using their learnings now and into the future. I'm Andrew Capel, your host. Let's get started with this week's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of How I Started podcast. We have a guest here referred over from Omid Tabai, who is actually my lawyer and is a mutual acquaintance of Ryan. And we had gotten connected a couple of weeks ago. So excited to be chatting here with Ryan and dig into his starting of the business and then some of the transitions that he's gone through and what he's up to now. So Ryan, welcome.
Happy to be here, Andrew.
All right. Well, how did you start iContact?
Well, I started iContact in 2002 when I was a freshman in college at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I was 18. We were web designers. We're a couple of web designers that had a lot of clients and needed to send out email newsletters to their customers and subscribers. And we just started what was called IntelliContact. It later became iContact.com. And we became the second largest email marketing software tool in the world for small and mid-sized businesses with over 70,000 paying customers. We later sold the company in 2012 for $170 million. So we had a great 10-year run.
Yeah. Was that second behind SurveyMonkey?
No, we were second behind Constant Contact.
Okay.
Constant Contact was the largest. I think you're talking about MailChimp, perhaps, the other monkey.
Yep.
They were number 3, actually.
Yep.
They were number 3, and then after we sold, they became number 1 and later sold into it for over $1 billion.
Okay. So that was that was after you were a couple steps ahead of them.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Cool. All right. So IntelliContact, so web designers. So did you start that in middle school, or when did you get started with that first business?
I basically started an HTML class in 1997 when I was in 7th grade, and then I became a web designer in high school, did maybe 40 websites for different clients, $500 at a pop, and then realized that all these websites needed a way to collect email newsletters, the subscribers, and we created one of the first web-based software tools before SaaS was even a phrase.
Okay. And what was the decision like? You're running a successful business starting in middle school, then throughout high school. Did you consider not going to college and just going pro right out of high school, or what?
I wasn't quite LeBron James. I went straight to UNC at 18. I did my 1 year, so maybe I'm Cooper Flagg. I'm doing my 1 year at Duke. No, my 1 year at UNC.
Yeah.
And then I went to the pros after that. It took 3 years to get to $1 million in revenue. I did drop out of college after 2 years and never went back. I later went to grad school, but never went back to college.
Oh, how was that admissions process for grad school?
Good. I ended up having a case study written about iContact at Harvard Business School. I was 26, and the professor said, "Hey, good job. If you ever sell your company, you should come do an MBA here." So that's what I did.
So you kind of went in through the side door. Yeah, it's like, business. You don't always want to apply for where they're looking for a credential that you might not have, and you just get in through another way.
Exactly.
Okay. And so you had the web design newsletter. I'm just thinking of right now, like there's Substack and Beehive, which have really taken off. So what was back then? What was the process like of getting subscribers? How frictionless was it, or was it really clunky to grab email subscribers?
It was clunky. It was 2002. The emails were sending out of a server literally in our closet. And these days, you don't have servers in your closet. You've got servers in the cloud. So this was before those days, and there wasn't click tracking. There was not HTML emails. There wasn't bounce handling. Our big innovation was we allowed you to put a widget on your website that collected the first name and the email of the subscriber, and we were one of the first to do open tracking, click tracking, HTML emails, automated email sequences. What you see is what you get, WYSIWYG editor within the application itself. All those were big innovations in 2003.
Yeah. Was it AOL and Yahoo as like the top websites at the time, or
not quite?
Okay,
not quite. AOL sort of had fallen off by 98, 99.
Okay.
Google had started rising up by 99, 2000. And by 2002, when we started, Google was the top search engine by then. It was neck and neck with Yahoo, but by 2002, Google had taken over.
Okay. And what about Ask Jeeves? Was that around?
That Not quite. You're almost right, but you're about 5 years too late. So Ask Jeeves stopped being. It was Ask Jeeves, Alta Vista, Lycos, Dogpile, all of those, Northern Lights. All of those were in 95 to 98.
Okay. Yeah, I was born in 1990, so I was like coming up right around those times, and I'm like thinking of like the dial-up and AOL, like watching like the sports, like before fantasy football, it was like you could watch the statistics and watch little videos, and I'm trying to think if I was like entering my email address. I created my first email address in 2000 because my email address was ASK, my initials 3000 at AOL.com, and ASK 2000 wasn't available, so.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cool. So yeah, no, it's just fascinating to kind of like I'm sure visually remember it because you're building and it must have been a exciting period, but also challenging, and just to really talk about the patterns of innovation and opportunities, and maybe you see some similarities or differences to cloud computing, to mobile, now to AI. Do you have any thoughts there about like the patterns of things that you were seeing?
Well, every 20 years, a big new platform change happens. In the 80s, it was personal computers taking over from much bigger computers that used to be and take up whole rooms. In the 90s, it was the internet. In the 2000s, it was software running on the browser, cloud computing. In the 2010s, it was mobile computing. In the 2020s, it's AI. And so every 10 years, I guess, there's a big new platform shift.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious, like doing a startup, like I read the book, The Mom Test of Customer Development, like talking to your users and like hearing about their pain points and what their workflows are actually like, not just like guessing and hoping that they buy your product. But it sounds like you didn't even need to do that because you built the product for yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we built a product that would make it easy for any person, any web designer, any small business owner to easily send out email newsletters.
Cool. And so you built that for yourself and like the other web designers and small business owners that you had gotten connected or were serving. So you got some initial traction, the $1 million over 3 years. Like, what did you do after that to figure out growth?
Well, the first, 100 customers is hard. We were going door to door to restaurants, literally Jimmy John's subs, Miami subs, putting physical glass fish bowls in front of their cash registers, putting up signs that said, put in your business card to get a free sub drawing once a week. And that when we go collect them every Friday, we would type them up. We would grow their list, 100 new people a week. And that was how we got our first 100 customers. And then we realized Microsoft, the big company, was in the business as well with a tool called Microsoft List Builder. So we wrote a script that subscribed to every single one of the 35,000 newsletters that were sent out on Microsoft List Builder. And then once they emailed us, we were sent an auto reply saying, hey, thanks for sending us this message. You should check out our tool. It's half the price. And that worked very, very well to growth hack us to 1,000 customers.
Wow. So it was kind of like service as software where you were visiting the local restaurants and like you probably taught them to run the promotion, right? And then did you like create templates or scripts of stuff for them to help?
We did everything for them for like $20 a month because we just needed case studies. We needed proof that the system worked.
Yeah. Is that something that I don't see a lot of businesses like SaaS businesses, these internet businesses, like people just are doing it from their computer, but like mixing in that in-person, like visiting office parks or restaurants and things like that. Do you see a lot of entrepreneurs doing that nowadays?
Well, you got to do things that don't scale the first 2 or 3 years in order to figure out your product, your business model, your ideal client persona. Airbnb was, what was their famous, in 2008, they did their marketing by creating John McCain cereal
Oh,
and
the cereal, the
Obama
Obama O's.
cereal.
Yeah.
They were going door to door to potential houses to find people that would get on their system. That doesn't scale, but if you're trying to get your first 100 people, same story with DoorDash. The first 100 restaurants in Palo Alto that DoorDash signed up, they did it, the founders themselves, manually going door to door. So you got to do whatever you got to do initially to get your first customers.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got the first 100, and then you got the 1,000 from Microsoft List Builder, auto reply, undercutting them. So then what happened? How'd you get to the next milestone?
We figured out our unit economics. We figured out it cost $500 in Google ad spend to get a new customer, and that customer would spend $56 a month with us on average. So we realized we'd make our money back in 9 months. And we looked at the lifetime value of a customer, which for us was about $1,700 per customer. And we said, you know what, we're willing to trade a $500 bill to get a $1,700 bill. And we just did that over and over and over again. And we would pay $500 up front in sales and marketing expenses to get a $1,700 annuity stream over the next 3 years. And once we figured that out, then we could go to venture capitalists and say, hey, if you put $1 in, you'll get $3.50 out. Let's go. And then they funded it.
So it's like a money printing machine. How long did that money printing machine work for?
Well, in venture-backed businesses, the point is revenue growth, not necessarily profitable revenue growth. We definitely burned through about $30 million to get to $50 million in revenue. But by the time we got to $50 million in annual revenue in 2011, we were break even. And then we sold the company in early 2012 for about 3.5 times revenue, about $170 million, all cash, no stock. It was a good deal. And so the money printing machine, I guess, lasted, the full length of the company until we exited.
Yep. Wow. And what was the driver of the exit? Was it the opportunity or the offer that was too good to pass up? Or like after 10 years, did you want to do something else or what?
I think our goal was initially to just get to $1 million in sales, and then when we got there, we're like, wow, this is going quick. Maybe we should try to get to 10. And then when we got there, we said, all right, our number was 100 million, and the second we get an offer above 100 million, we're going to sell. We had gotten an offer for 95 million in 2009 from Salesforce, from Mark Benioff himself, and we actually said yes. But then he walked away 2 days before he closed the deal and decided to buy ExactTarget instead. And then we did a Series B to take some money off the table. We did what's called founder liquidity, where we sold some of our shares to get money for ourselves. And then in 2012, we sold the rest of the company for 170.
Wow. So did you go out to San Francisco, or did Mark go to North Carolina? Did you have in-person meetings?
Both, yeah. We had in-person meetings. Mark came to North Carolina. I went to San Francisco a couple times, and we had integrated with Salesforce between our email platform and their CRM. So we became partners with them. We got a lot of customers from them. Ultimately, they bought somebody else. That was okay because it got me to go to San Francisco, which I later moved to in 2012.
Okay. And so that piqued your interest in San Francisco. And forgive me for not knowing, was ExactTarget, they're in Indianapolis?
They are or were, yeah, they were in Indianapolis.
Were they a competitor, like direct competitor?
Yeah, they were a competitor, but in the enterprise. They targeted much bigger businesses.
Right. And I think HubSpot started around 2009. But had they even really popped up? They were like kind of doing a whole bunch of stuff in the early days.
Nobody knew about HubSpot until about 2015.
Yeah. Cool. Nice. Well, so this was in 2012, and then you exited and then were able to walk away. Did you have like an earnout, or you said it was all cash, but did you, you were just done as soon as the exit happened?
Thankfully, yes. There was a 90-day period where they had me help manage the transition. They just wanted to reduce costs, which a lot of acquirers do. They'll let go of a third or fourth of the company, reduce costs, find efficiencies in HR, finance, R&D, operations, and cash flow the business. And once you start cash flowing a business and optimizing for EBITDA instead of growth, it makes it a little bit more of a boring place. And so it sort of killed a little bit of the vibe and the culture that we had worked so hard to create. What I did is I then went to business school for 2 years at HBS and then moved to San Francisco.
Okay. And were you originally from North Carolina or no?
Sort of. I moved there when I was 18 and lived there from 18 to 27. I was originally born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then I grew up the son of a minister and a social worker. And my dad, the minister, was at a church in Rhode Island and then a church in Florida. So I grew up as a son of a minister moving to different places.
Oh, cool. I'm in Rhode Island right now. So.
Oh, great. I spent 8 years in Woonsocket in the 80s.
Woonsocket, kind of near Providence.
Everything is.
Yeah, exactly.
Providence.
Yeah. I'm in Westerly, so I'm on the other end of the state, about 45 minutes. So, okay. And so how did you, and like to kind of go back, like the beginning of it is really interesting. So how did you become a website designer? How did you get into that?
My uncle was very influential. He had given me a computer when I was 11 in 1995. I got on AOL and started learning about internet marketing and computers and computer games, and just started teaching senior citizens in my community in Florida how to use the internet, how to send pictures to their grandkids, and then how to do websites. E-commerce was taking off by 98. Started doing a bunch of e-commerce websites. Saw a couple of my clients go from 0 to $1 million in revenue within a year with my help. And I said, you know what, I should start doing this for myself.
Cool. That's a neat how I started story. And okay, so you were in high school. How did you decide to go to UNC?
I'd gotten into UF, UNC, a few other places, and UNC had the best public business school. It was much lower cost than UPenn or some of the Ivies. Wouldn't have to take on debt to go there. A little bit closer to my parents who lived in Florida. College town, beautiful, beautiful college town, lots of sports, lots of tradition there. So I'm glad I went there, and I spent 10 years there, even though I was only in college for 2 of them.
Yep. So that's where you set up. Were you in like the Research Triangle Park where you had a headquarters there, and were you hiring? Like you really built out the hub there?
Yeah, we were. We started on campus in Chapel Hill for a couple of years, and then we moved to RTP, Research Triangle Park, after that.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's been around for since the 60s or 70s. And so were there a lot of other startups that you were networking with in that local area, or were you just kind of building on your own?
Yeah, there were quite a few companies in North Carolina at the time. We were certainly one of them that was growing quickly. But there were other email marketing platforms, even Bronemail, other SaaS platforms, Channel Advisor, that we would recruit from and learn from. And we were part of the local chapters of all the Council for Entrepreneurial Development, all the UNC entrepreneurship events that happened. So we definitely got out there and got to know everyone.
Cool. So yeah, it sounds like it was pretty smooth and up and to the right, but I'm sure there were challenges. So what were 2 or 3 of the distinct issues and real big pain points that you ran through?
Well, you just got to be willing to do whatever you have to the first 3 years to bootstrap and keep your revenues higher than your expenses and keep your costs low. We did not take any salaries for 3 years. We would do website design for clients on the side to pay our own bills, but we wouldn't take any salaries from iContact. We accrued them. Then when we got to $1 million in revenue, then we started to actually take them. We just worked real hard. We jumped in dumpsters to get proof of purchase tags off of chair boxes. So we get $50 rebates back from Staples. $50 was a lot of money to us back in 2002, 2003. We lived in the office the summer of 2003 to keep costs low. We worked, 18-hour days when we needed to. And so, we had the traditional, It was sort of like, Facebook in 2004 in Palo Alto. For us, it was Chapel Hill in 2003, and setting up iContact.
Yep. When you say we, what was I don't know if you had multiple co-founders or if it was the core like initial team. What was that like?
Yeah, I had one co-founder other than myself, Aaron Houghton, who was the developer CTO and co-founder chairman, and he and I partnered. I was the marketing business strategy management guy. He was the coder developer person, and it was a great partnership that ended up, helping us build a great company. And then we'd hired, a team as we could afford it.
Yep. So I'm curious about sales, like doing the SMB motion, and you were acquiring a lot of customers through Google ad opportunities. How big did the sales team get to be?
By 2011, we got to a 60-person sales team, which was broken down about 20 people who were sales development reps that followed up with the warm leads, the trials that came in. About 20 people who were account executives who closed the bigger opportunities that came in and worked to get 1 to 2 year contracts. And then we had 20 people who were customer success managers, account managers who would maintain, grow, and expand the revenue.
Interesting. Were the customer success managers, were they salespeople, or was it just kind of natural expansion because the product was really good?
Well, customer success managers are a form of salesperson. They're not necessarily a hunter, so they're not going to go get the new customer in the door. But what they are going to do is take a contract that's maybe $2,000 a year, and through strategic advice, list growth, feature sales, user sales, work to grow that into a $5,000 a month client over time.
Yep. Nice. So it sounds like that worked pretty well with the simple breakdown, a third, and so you had the successful exit transition. You went to HBS. What was the experience like at HBS?
Great. I enjoyed it. I was 28 when I started there, and I did 2 years. It was I was doing another startup at that point, and building a community of global entrepreneurs called Hive.org at that time, as well as a different mobile app called Connect.com. So I was still being an entrepreneur, but I enjoyed class. I learned a lot about how the world works, and or at least how the world worked 13 years ago. It's changing now. And I learned a lot about how big businesses work, how 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 employees work, how public companies operate, about, professional, traditional CEO leadership in a much larger company, which I'm running a 5 or 6 person company today with SaaSRise, but we'll get there. We'll get back to hundreds and hundreds of employees.
Yep. Did learning about that, did you ever, I don't know if you did have a stint at a much bigger company or a publicly traded company. Did you want to take a swing at something like that?
At the time we had been purchased by a public company, our iContact, and I think my interest at the time was I wanted to someday build a publicly traded company. These days I'm 40, I have a son, we're about to have another son, and I actually don't want to be a CEO of a publicly traded company. It's a lot of people just overworking, frankly, to do that. And so I love building private companies. The like 5 to 100 million ARR revenue range, I could just do that over and over and over again.
Yep. So why don't you tell us about SaaSRise?
So SaaSRise is a community. It's a community of software CEOs and founders that are experienced, that all have between 1 million and 100 million in annual revenues. We have 520 members so far. It's at SaaSRise.com, SaaS. And what can I say? It's a community where we help our members grow their businesses and prepare for successful exits. And then we also put on these 4-month programs on Zoom where we'll teach you how to do build predictable revenue growth machines, build out outbound prospecting campaigns, build out ad campaigns, build out your team, prepare for successful exits. So it's been fun, and we just launched a second community last week called GrowthRise.com, which is for B2B sales and marketing leaders. So we're having fun, and our plan is to build about 20 of these niche B2B mastermind communities over the next 10 years.
Interesting. And so is it all remote community, remote digital community, or are you planning to do in-person meetups?
Right now, it's all digital. It's all remote. It's a much lower cost structure that way. We do plan on having local volunteer-led chapters at some point in the future. But for now, it's all digital. It's just been fantastic.
Nice. What is the biggest challenge of SaaSRise and GrowthRise?
I don't know if there's a lot of super hard challenges right now. I would say that the big opportunity is we're growing quite quickly. We've grown from 0 to 4 million in ARR in 18 months, which was way faster than iContact was growing. We're not planning on raising venture capital. We're just bootstrapping, taking on a little bit of what's called revenue-based financing, where you get a little debt to fund growth that then you pay off from your revenue. So we're doing that. Challenges is, handling growth, creating processes, creating, standard operating procedures, hiring and retaining great people, but those are the same challenges in any fast growth company.
Yeah. And they're good challenges, or, there's always going to be issues, but, so it sounds like it's working pretty well. Was GrowthRise always the plan to start as the second one, or did that just come up as from challenges from your community members in SaaSRise?
I think that I don't know if we had a plan when we started to make multiple communities. I think originally we were just gonna build SaaSRise. I think once we started seeing how well SaaSRise worked and how we went from 0 to 4 million in revenue in 18 months, we said, you know what? Are there other markets that we could build communities for, where we could build this digital first community that focuses on bringing together members who are focused on growth and exiting? We're going to launch many communities. We have growthrise.com. We're about to launch venturerise.com, which is for CEOs who are venture capital backed in any sector. Next year, we'll launch a community called Rise that will be just for CEOs of $10 million plus revenue companies in any sector. And so this Napoleon Hill sort of methodology of the mastermind is a classic business technique for spreading knowledge. And our mission is to advance humanity by helping B2B knowledge spread faster. And it's certainly working.
Nice. Are you thinking about doing one for sales and go-to-market consultants, or no?
Well, we have one sort of for that group. We have GrowthRise welcomes any sales or go-to-market leader. It could be a consultant. Certainly anybody that's actively a practitioner of the field of digital growth is welcome in GrowthRise. So yeah, I think there's a big opportunity there.
All right. Well, I'll check that out. And I'm curious. So we have a lot of listeners of folks that are students that are in college or recent graduates. Any thoughts around like a bridge or the pipeline of students to internships, or to get involved in startups? Anything around that?
I just start your own damn thing. It's like, if you really find a company that you're passionate about, go work there for 12 to 18 months and get some skills. I think every successful entrepreneur does an apprenticeship of some sort. Mine was when I was 17. I was the VP of marketing for one of the e-commerce companies that I was doing the website for in the arthritis nutraceutical space. That grew very quickly in 1999, 2000, 2001, and made me think, hey, maybe I should, instead of being a VP of marketing, I should probably be the CEO co-founder. So by age 18, I was like, I sort of knew then, all right, I'm going to incorporate my own Delaware C Corp, and I'm going to go build my own company. And 1% equity is cool, but 80% equity is even cooler.
Yeah, that's awesome. It took me about a decade of getting the experience to go out and start my own thing. So I love the accelerated learning curve that you picked up.
Totally.
All right. Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. So to close out, books, and they can be business books or like personal philosophy, fiction books, like any recommended books or podcasts that you like.
Yeah, I think there's like a couple classics that I think every motivated person should read. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is a one that a lot of people will mention. Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is a classic about how to build wealth, as well as his sequel, which is Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. It's about how to build companies and build wealth by building companies. Then there is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Those are 5 books that have been pretty influential in my life. I wrote a book in 2008 about how to build a company with $1 million in sales called 0 to 1 million. That's on Amazon. And then I wrote a book in 2023 that's on how to design the life you love, more personal development. And that book is called Magic Year. And so those books I think are also worth checking out.
Awesome. Well, we'll link up to all of them, and the book from 2008. So what led you to write the book at that time?
Well, it was pretty, back then it was very hard to publish a book. You had to get a publisher. You couldn't quite self-publish back then. And so, I went through the process of buying a physical book at Barnes & Noble that had a list of 1,000 publisher book agents. I had my assistant type them all up in a spreadsheet. I sent a physical piece of mail to all 1,000, which, 30-cent stamps each, spent $400 or $500 on doing that. I got one reply from 1,000 letters, and the reply said, yeah, I'd love to, help you get a book contract. And so I went with that guy, a guy named Rick from Toronto, and Rick helped me get a contract with McGraw-Hill. And in 2008, published the book. It was a really, it was a very simple book on how to build a business from nothing, how to get started, and how to get to your first $1 million in sales.
Yeah. I'm sure you talked about the non-scalable things. So you weren't able to send out an email to the publishers back then?
No, it's not that the publishers don't work with individual writers. They only work with agents.
Okay.
And so the gatekeepers are the book agents. You have to actually get the book agents to say yes. If the book agent said yes, then they would write up a proposal for you, and then they would take it to the publishing houses, and then the publishing house would say yes. Okay.
And last question, your book in 2023, did you self-publish that, or did you go through McGraw-Hill?
Yeah. There's just no need anymore to go to McGraw-Hill. You can, especially, you only make $1 per book anyway if you're selling it through McGraw-Hill or some publisher. You're better off just, using a book as a lead magnet and having it generate revenue for your business.
Is that what the first book did for iContact?
Yeah, in some way. In some way it was that I just wanted to spread knowledge to other ambitious 24-year-olds like me at the time. Cool.
Well, yeah, that's it seems like that's been a through line of what you're passionate about, and really appreciate Ryan telling the story and talking about the 7th grade startup, and just kind of how it started and how it's going and what you're doing in the future.
Well, thanks for having me on, Andrew. Happy to be here. Feel free to reach out if you're listening to this. I'm Ryan at SaaSRise.com.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and also share it out on LinkedIn or with friends, colleagues, or classmates who might like the show as well. You can also get the newsletter at leaderlev.com/podcast. You can find that also in the show notes.